Hey everybody, this is Ryan McClanahan with historythroughcards.com. I hope you're all doing very well today. I found a really interesting article, not on the card, but the plastic that was used to protect our cards back in the 1970s and 1980s and going forward, the evolution and the science behind what protects our cards. And I wanted to kind of share that with you guys today. Uh, it's a little bit different though because back in the 70s and 1980s and even the 1990s, uh, a lot more people were actually completing sets instead of getting cards graded. Obviously, the grading for cards didn't start until about 1991, but in reality, it didn't become a full forced thing, if you will, until like the mid to late 1990s, and then by the early to mid 2000s is when grading really took off. And before that, we were using plastic pages, particularly because we were completing more and more sets. I don't think that's really the case today, where collectors are completing sets, at least modern collectors. I could be wrong though, because I'm not a modern collector. I'm a vintage collector, and so like my modern would be like stuff like this. If I can't consider like this stuff vintage. This is a 19, I think it's a 1984 Starco. This is Dominique Wilkins, and obviously it's a screw down. We don't use screw downs for the most part anymore. I think maybe a few dealers here and there will, collectors will as well, but I think we've really kind of gotten away from this stuff, particularly because I think what it does is it will flatten out the card, and when the collector goes in to get the card graded, the companies will say they're altered, and I don't really think that's the case. I just think that it may uh, shape in the card a little bit differently, and they might consider it altered, though it hasn't been trimmed or anything like that. You guys could tell me in the comment section below if I'm off base here. I don't mind. I really don't. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And there's somebody who's obviously like smarter than I am. I'll never say that I'm a smart dude, but some things I do know really well, and other things I'm still learning about. And this is something I think that it was a huge deal back in the 1980s for sure, and we haven't really had too many problems, I think, with the plastics that are being used. Though you never know in the future what's going to happen, especially when it comes to especially the cards in these holders right here. It's something I don't think that we really think about on a day-to-day basis. And so I wanted to kind of like dive into this because it is hobby history. So I think you guys might find this really interesting in regards to hobby history, that is. So here we go. This is from Baseball Cards Magazine, Volume 1, Number 2, Autumn 1981. Conservation for Card Collectors, Part 1, The Plastics Wrap, by Bill Cole. Editor's note: Bill Cole is a registered professional engineer who has worked in the field of safety engineering for over 15 years. In recent years, he has been professionally involved in the design and production of materials for archival storage of cards and other collectibles. In the premiere issue of Baseball Cards magazine, Bob Lemke published an article warning that polyvinyl chloride (PVC) holders could damage baseball cards. The response was immediate. Some collectors swore off plastic album pages for good. Others complained that they had never seen a card damaged in any way despite prolonged storage in plastic. The August 1977 issue of Modern Photography contained a column attacking the use of PVC products for storage of photographs. Subsequently, a major manufacturer of vinyl products claimed the evidence against PVC was inconclusive and demanded, but did not get, a retraction from the magazine. The manufacturer offered his own laboratory test report, which showed no damage to photo slides by PVC holders. As recently as last year, however, Eastman Kodak issued a strongly worded advisory against the use of PVC. Dr. Thomas Sharpless, a chemist and coin collector, writing in the official journal of the American Numismatic Association, analyzed the damage inflicted by PVC holders on coins. His report precipitated a blizzard of mail to numismatic magazines around the country, with some collectors reporting major losses in coin and in paper currency. But card collectors who knew of these reports questioned their relevance. Many just couldn't understand what bills and coins had to do with pieces of cardboard. What's going on here? Are vinyl holders safe to use or aren't they? And whose word can you trust? Based on our exhaustive research into the problem, we think we've found some answers. We've spoken with plastics engineers, with manufacturers of resins and raw materials, with people who make vinyl film and people who distribute it. We've interviewed collectors, chemists, and conservators, including members of the preservation staff of the Library of Congress and other experts in the field of paper conservation. The answer we've come up with is yes, all PV sheet protectors will eventually damage cards, but the key work here is eventually. Some flexible vinyls will degrade rapidly, while others may last for years. Unfortunately, there is no way of telling which are which, or how long it will take for any damage to show up without running extensive physical and chemical tests on each plastic album page in advance. Lemke likened the situation to sitting on a bench after the Weather Service has broadcast tidal wave warnings. In reality, the situation is more like waiting for the next great California earthquake. You know for sure it's going to happen someday, but you won't know which day or which year or which decade until the roof finally starts caving in. Let's get one thing straight. There is no need for panic and no excuse for sensationalism. Our object in communicating this information is not to put any merchandisers out of business or to strike terror into the hearts of the buying public. We are committed to telling what we believe to be the truth in the best interest of collectors everywhere, and let the chips fall where they may. The fact is, there will always be a market for vinyl holders for short-term storage. Dealers will continue to use them for display and at shows. Collectors will still use them to house their least valuable cards. And let us not forget how many cards exist that are worth at least then, say, 25 cents each. And for any card which you want to make sure survives intact into the 21st century, PVC plastic is just plain not suitable. To see why this is so, let's go over once more the way that vinyl film is made. PVC starts out as a hard, rigid material which requires the addition of one or more plasticizers to make it flexible. Some films consist of up to 1/3 plasticizers. These plasticizers are only substances technically classified as esters, of which diacetylphthalate, what the f? That's not a fucking word. They're doing this just to fucking fuck with me. Diacetylphthalate. DOP is typical. DOP is used as a primary plasticizer in virtually every scrap of PVC sheet made in this country, although it is often found in combination with smaller amounts of other plasticizers. Now, it is DOP and its oily cousins which cause most of the trouble by oozing or migrating out of the plastic and into whatever the sheet is protecting. The extent of migration and the rate at which it proceeds are determined by a variety of factors, including the kind of plasticizer used, its percentage in the PVC mix, and the conditions such as humidity, temperature, and pressure under which the vinyl sheet is stored. The plasticizer, which is dissolved in the PVC, is in a state of dynamic equilibrium with its environment. A little bit is always going into or out of solution. As a result, there is always some plasticizer present on the surface of the film, and contact pressure or higher temperatures will transfer more out. This is why manufacturers add what are known as blocking agents, which prevent adjacent sheets of PVC from sticking to each other. In addition to such esters as DOP, vinyl producers also throw in a number of different additives as both primary and secondary plasticizers. Two commonly used additives are polyesters such as polypropylene adipate and epoxidized oils such as epoxidized soybean, linseed, and castor oils. Each of these has different purposes. The polyesters are very thick, oily liquids, each molecule of which weighs about 5 times as much as a molecule of DOP. Consequently, they tend to stay put in PVC rather than migrate out. The manufacturer who wants to make a high quality PVC film will replace up to half of the DOP with a polyester or a similar polymetric plasticizer. Unfortunately, no more than about half of the DOP can be replaced in this fashion, or the film will be too rigid, and that still leaves a fair amount of DOP which can leak out, although at a slower rate. The epoxidized oils work as secondary plasticizers and stabilizers. They are present in PVC in small percentages, usually. In 1979, however, a minor crisis hit the plastics industry when supply problems caused a 20% drop in DOP production for the year. As a result, many vinyl processors switched to other plasticizers. Some suppliers, including Union Carbide, began pushing epoxidized soybean oil as a replacement for DOP. On the other hand, the Ferrero Corporation took the position that excessive migration would result if epoxidized oil were used as a primary plasticizer. Ferrero recommended that the oil continue to be used only as an extender, i.e., as a secondary plasticizer. Let's stop for a moment and consider what all this means. First of all, there is no such thing as a flexible PVC album page without plasticizer. Almost all of this plasticizer is of the migratory variety, and sooner or later, some is going to leak out, even from the high quality sheets. How much and how fast are questions that nobody can answer unless you want to run some pretty expensive accelerated aging tests on samples of every page you buy. Second, there's a lot of variation in what goes into the PVC blend. Vinyl films are a zoo to different chemicals, some of which we haven't even mentioned yet. A distributor may not know exactly what a manufacturer has put into the plastic, and some manufacturers won't tell you anyway because they might be disclosing proprietary information. Furthermore, the content of any given run of film may be largely determined by monetary fluctuations in the additives market, as the example of the epoxidized soybean oil shows. Of course, you can always hire a chemist to run tests such as gas chromatography and infrared spectroscopy on your album pages, or you could sit around and wait for your cards to soak up some visible evidence. Which brings us to the interesting question: what effect will a leaking plasticizer have on a baseball card, and can the stuff be removed once it is on? We asked William Sarl of Boston, Mass., a conservator who is one of the world's leading experts on the restoration and preservation of cards and other paper collectibles. Here's his reply. Disulfosulfate and similar esters are pretty stable under normal conditions, so I wouldn't expect them to contribute much to the aging of the card. The big problem is going to be back migration of the lithographic inks from the card into the plastic, assuming the card picks up enough plasticizers for this to start. If we catch a card in time, we can wash out residual plasticizers with hydrocarbon solvents such as hexanas that won't cause any additional damage to the inks. Sarl incidentally does not recommend that anyone try this procedure outside of a laboratory, since the solvents involved are highly flammable and some have even been shown to cause neurological damage as well. That's damage to people, not to cards. Now that we've beaten the subject of plasticizers to death, the next issue we face is the need for thermal stabilizers. PVC degrades chemically when exposed to heat, with hydrochloric acid given off. This acid acts as a catalyst to future degradation, so that the chain reaction starts. At the temperatures that PVC sheets are processed and sealed, the reaction is so rapid that the PVC would decompose into a gummy black mass if it weren't for the added stabilizers. The stabilizers used in flexible vinyls are essentially barium, cadmium, and zinc soaps, which suck up excess acid like rolaids. The epoxidized oils we mentioned earlier act to improve the performance of the stabilizers. Once a PVC sheet has exhausted its supply of stabilizer, it will rapidly decompose and start yellowing. More important, it will also release hydrochloric acid, which is definitely bad news for your cards. A well-made vinyl sheet, which is properly stabilized, might last for years if it is kept away from heat and from ultraviolet light. Again, however, there is no way to tell in advance a good piece of PVC plastic from one that isn't without laboratory testing. In addition, there are questions about the soaps themselves. As far as is known, these chemicals are not particularly harmful to cards, but the work of Dr. Thomas Sharpless on PVC coin holders suggests that the soaps don't entirely stay put in the PVC. It is likely that they get transported around to some extent with the migrating plasticizers. If this occurs on a large enough scale, a card could soak up enough stabilizers to cause the PVC to self-destruct, even at room temperature, in a relatively short time. I could go on with the descriptions of other additives in PVC, such as ultraviolet inhibitors and antioxidants, but by now you should be getting the idea that PVC is not necessarily the best material in which to risk storing your most treasured possessions. If you have stored your cards in plastic for years with no apparent harm, you may be in for some unpleasant surprises during the next few years if your good vinyl suddenly expires. Alright, if the vinyl isn't suitable, what is? Cellulose acetate isn't. It too may contain plasticizers, not to mention acetic acid, and it tends to be too sensitive to changes in humidity. Polyethylene and polypropylene aren't much better. They contain a variety of substances such as antioxidants, which have recently been shown to be harmful to cards. The answer, and in fact the only answer, is polyethylene terephthalate PET, or polyester film for short. PET is a long-lasting, virtually indestructible plastic, of which several brands are recommended by the Library of Congress for the protection of valuable documents. According to the library, the polyester film used must be free of all plasticizers, ultraviolet inhibitors, impregnants, and surface coatings. PET types which meet these specifications include DuPont's Mylar D and ICI's Metalinx 0 and 516. These clear coat films are among the most stable and inert of all known plastics. The problem with using PET, aside from its expense, which is considerably greater than that of PVC, is that until recently the uncoated film could not be heat sealed. The only method known for sealing polyester without adhesives was to use ultrasonics, a cumbersome procedure at best. Recently, however, some exciting new advances in plastics technology have made it possible to heat seal virgin polyester by a process known as biaxial reorigination. The result is a seal as strong as the plastic itself. Since the new technology is now in the hands of a number of producers, we confidently predict that it will not be long before heat-sealed polyester sleeves for card protection are available on the market. As Bob Leckie has noted, it is not possible at present to produce multi-pocket album pages out of PET, but some enterprising manufacturer will probably figure out a way to do so soon. Until then, the individual sleeves, each big enough for one card, are strongly recommended for all cards of value. The polyester sleeves could be inserted into standard vinyl album pockets. However, because of the risk of hydrochloric acid seeping in through the open sides of the sleeves, it's a better idea to dispense with the vinyl entirely. To sum up, then, we feel that PVC protectors are inappropriate for long-term storage of valuable cards. Instead, we recommend sleeves made from high-purity polyester film. To the collectors who protest that they've stored their cards in vinyl for years without damage, all we can say is that the older the album page is, the closer it's getting to the end of its usable life. In the words of Dr. Sharpless, these PVC holders are little time bombs waiting to go off. The decision to defuse them is entirely up to you. Today we take something like the manufacture of our plastic holders for granted. We really don't think about it. I mean, it's natural, it's normal not to. Most people just want to get their cards graded and put them away somewhere, or put them up in their card rooms and display their cards. That's a separate issue too, by the way. I'm not entirely sure if these are UV protected. Who actually knows? I kind of doubt it. If you put a card in the sun long enough, it'll change. The ink will fade over time. Personally, I don't display my cards anymore. I really don't want to risk the fading of my cards. And again, I pay a lot for my cards, so I want to make sure they're protected. And again, I really don't care if my cards are graded or not. It's not about the card company. It's not about the grade on the card. I'm a true collector, and it's really about the card for me. So when you're looking at the 1916 M101 series, how many advertisers on the backs of those cards are still around today? So I do have some concerns about autographed cards in our slabs like this. Are they going to hold up over the next 50, 100 years? I don't know. We do know that there are autographs that have not fared well, and they're from the 90s and early 2000s. And today, cards, I think for the most part, the modern cards, something like this, and I'll talk more about this gentleman and this card later in a different video. I don't want to do it right now, but this is a modern card from 2017, and it is autographed. Spoiler alert, Dick Miller here, he has passed on, so he's not signing anymore, unfortunately. But the modern autographed cards, I don't know how well these things are going to fare, because most modern cards today are they're produced with some sort of plastic in the card, not just card stock that's used traditionally, like this card right here. And this is autographed by Dennis Eckersley. I really like this card, by the way. It's fantastic. But I think that the cards themselves, these cards themselves, might fare better in the future. That's just my guess. But we've seen where cards from like the 1990s, autographs in particular, have not done very well. They've usually faded over time. So my question is, after all of that, are these UV protected? I don't know. I have no idea to that question. I'm reaching out to you guys to give me an answer here. How well these things themselves are going to fare, despite maybe the company not being there in 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Again, like, I'll be an old man or I'll be a ghost, in that time. So I want to protect my cards now, and hopefully share them with the future generations, and make sure that they're available to future generations to study or to view. And if you really think about it, guys, we are just conservators for other generations for our cards. I think 90 to 100% of our collections will go on to somebody else in the future. This is a 1970 Kellogg's. It's the first year of production, and I'll probably get into the technology behind this set right here. These cards, they're notorious for cracks. If you have a card like this, these Kellogg's cards, if you have them out in the open, if you will, not graded, they tend to bend, and they also will crack inside the holder here. So I don't have any of these except for this. This is the only one, and I really love Tom Seaver and his career. So I thought this was a fantastic card. Hopefully it holds out over time and won't crack. This is in good condition, but I only see one crack in it, and so you have to be like really careful, I guess, with this particular issue. And I think all of these Kellogg's issues here, you have to be kind of careful with. Who knows what's going to happen to these cards in the future? Whether or not they are very susceptible to cracking, chipping, or whatever inside the case. And that also could be true with other card sets too, and especially cards that were issued in the 1990s and maybe even the early 2000s, when the resin on those cards to protect those cards have actually done the reverse, and they've damaged a lot of those issues, a lot of those cards, and I could kind of see where maybe even if they're graded, that they could still that resin could break down. Actually, you see, in the 1912 T207, they used linseed oil on those cards, and that linseed oil has dried out. I mean, they say it dries out after like 50 years. We're beyond 50 years from 1912, and those cards have cracked considerably as well. So, you know, the preservation of cards, I think, is really important. And unfortunately, if you think about it, we're only on this earth for a short time, and uh, we should be conservators of these items, and not just this stuff either. More along the lines of museum pieces as well, and uh, just saving that stuff for future generations to appreciate as well. And it's a part. Basically, cards are a part of our American story and what is going on in American society at any given era, and also technology and science and all sorts of other things. Obviously, American history is also included in our sports cards. There's nothing saying that the cards in these holders here are safe. I hope they are, not just for me, but for future generations to enjoy these cards. And so I think today what a lot of collectors and especially dealers, they just want to get these cards graded for financial gain. And I got nothing against that per se. But if it's just a flipping deal, I'm kind of, I, I'm 50-50 on flipping. I understand why. Personally, like if I was to flip any cards in my collection, it would to get into another vintage card that I may not be able to afford otherwise, and that's actually occurred. But then I kind of missed the card that I flipped, and certain cards you might not be able to get your hands on afterwards because they've just skyrocketed in price. But again, guys, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this. And until the next time, I will talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye.